It's Monday. we,
What's the number?
it's March 3rd. But some of us apparently looked at last year's invite for March 4th, but still made it here. I don't have anything on the radar for tonight. I don't think I can't. I don't. Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing sitting in my queue that to excite y'all. I mean, Adam sent me off on a wild goose chase when he uh, sent an email to the list the other day and said that there was only one Byte Power magazine archived, and Byte Power was this actually. I have a couple with me right now. Byte Power was this cassette based magazine, and it would have a couple articles on it and a couple programs. And this one has like a spreadsheet and a slideshow, a couple other things. Some kind of program called Rockets. Oh, I think I know this. This Rockets is by a guy who also did a program about um, airships, rigid airships. Sort of this little informative program. Anyway, Byte Power was published by these two guys up in Ontario, sort of north of me. North is up, right? um,
Not too much
and
north of you, except for Canada.
yeah, north, where they play hockey and they wear toques. Um, so it's
Oh,
published by this.
David,
Yes,
was Byte Power General computer, or was it Timex
it was
related?
just Timex Sinclair, and more specifically that. Well, one side of the tape was for the 2068, and the other side of the tape was for the ZX Spectrum. Because people had little Spectrum cartridges for their 2016 that plugged into the slot. Um, and I think they did. I want to say they did most of their programming uh, on on the 2068. The premise behind this was you would subscribe, and they promised that over the course of 12 cassette tapes, you would get something like 130 programs. And in one of the issues later, one of the issues, I don't know, one of the cassettes later on, they did the math, and apparently you did get more than 130 programs, which is kind of crazy because there's just these two brothers. I imagine, the way I imagine is that they're sitting, at home, you know, coming up with all these little programs. Um, and the initial frequency was something like once a month or once every other month or something, and then it kind of fell off. This one says fall of 1988, and this other one I have says December, January 1987. So anyway, Adam was only able to find one of these tapes on my website, and I was thinking that's not right. And so I went and looked, and it was not right. I mean, I'd archived the tapes, but I didn't go through the tapes and sort of extract the articles and extract the programs. I remember having some real difficulty the first time around figuring out how to get the programs off the tape because they had some auto run mechanisms and stuff. And finally, I opened the tap files in a hex editor and just stripped out the text. And that's when I sort of stumbled across this comment from them about how if you wanted to, they had this quasi protection mechanism on their programs where so it said if you poke this specific address with a zero, instead of the program running, it will load and stop and show you the last line of the program, which was the save statements, and you could just like go to whatever that line number was, and it would save it off to tape. So I spent a lot of quality time over the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 days going through these tapes and putting them on the website. So if you go to the website now and look for the Byte Power magazine, you'll find a bunch of these things, and you'll find a bunch of the programs. They're cute programs. Some of them are kind of cool. One's a spreadsheet program, a real live spreadsheet. There's a word processing program, but then there's just a bunch amusing games. and sort of silly games like there's one where you drop water balloons on the people as they're walking by beneath the window of your apartment house. um, more stuff to stick on your SD card if you're a Pico owner, I guess. Anyway, so that's the only thing I was doing. Actually, hey Jeff, would you be willing to talk a little bit about this combined Pico card that we've been talking about for a couple days or a week now?
Sure, if you think it's the right time to do it.
Why not? I mean, it's not like we're who was it that was famous for vaporware? Um, lots of companies, but there's one that's not coming to me right now. It's not like we're Timex and we're going to go out of the.
Well, that's true. We don't have millions of dollars.
Right.
I'll just pop in for Adam real quick though, and remind start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
people know what we're talking about.
Nice job, Brian. That was awesome. That was a good Adam right there.
Well, David had remarked that he wanted to have some surface mount versions of the Pico Video and the Pico storage board ready for Vintage Computer Fest Midwest. And we started talking about this on our Wednesday meeting, and we came to the conclusion, I guess the best way to put it, that given the advances in the Pico over the last year or so, that it might make sense to have a single card, slightly larger form factor, that would incorporate both video and the Pico storage, so that people would have, instead of two cards, they could just simply buy one and have that capability. So we discussed what features we would want, and what we finally came down to is basically taking the functionality that we have in both of those cards and merging them into a single board. Right now, I'm planning on using a design that has a new Pico card that I found that basically brings out all 48 pins of the Pico and makes them available. It has 8 megabytes of flash on board, which is considerably more room than the Picos. It's an expensive card. It comes in at about $4.50. So it's a little more expensive than we have now. But it's a Pico 2, so it provides faster processing speed, more RAM, and the whole smash. And I'll be talking about this a little bit more in our Wednesday meeting, but I'm coming up with a basic design that will allow for all that functionality on a single card. It turns out the card has to be a little bit longer, just because I need more real estate to put components on there. And we're also talking about having the capability of some sort of an OLED display to help deal with the files on possibly files on the Pico card, so that maybe you don't have to go through all the gyrations with typing things in on the Timex keyboard. Also, some people have said they would like to have a serial port and a Wi-Fi ability on that as well. So some of that's going to depend on cost and the amount of programming time that we have available, because right now Ricardo is how do you pronounce his last name, David?
Like Gustavo? How do you pronounce
Yes, Ricardo, in Spanish is Calcaño.
Calcaño?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know I would just butcher it. So
Yeah,
at any rate, Ricardo is the one who does the programming for the Pico storage solution. So he has to finish up some work for the present version of the card, which will then be the stepping off point to have the upgraded firmware for this new card that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and the Pico 2 is available in a bunch of form factors. Like there's one that is just the same footprint as the current Pico. If you just want to upgrade in place for whatever solution you've got, and then there are other form factors. The Pico 2 can have a maximum of something like 48 pins, I think.
Yes.
And so what that does is, like, in your Pico video solution right now, Jeff, you're sharing you have three buffer chips, two for the address and one for the data bus, right? And you have to sort of switch between which ones you read because there's not enough pins on the current Pico. But with the new Pico, there's enough pins to just read it all at once.
David, I'm going to yank from you for a minute here.
Okay. Yeah, you want to share your screen?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Do you see?
This thing's amazing.
Yeah, so this is the board that we're looking at using, and
yeah, I mean, compare that to the current Pico. That's looks like twice as many pins, roughly.
Yeah,
okay,
roughly. So, and then this is a preliminary design that I've got started for the new board, and as you can see, we have two of those on the new board.
Yeah.
So, as I said, right now this is a work in progress, and we'll be discussing this more during our Wednesday meetings and have more information for the group as time goes on. I'm still hoping to have this available for VCF Midwest as well. Also, we're looking at moving from VGA to HDMI. Well, actually DVI, since we're not going to license HDMI. So there's so that would be a more up-to-date solution, which also I think would allow 50 hertz video if we wanted to do some weird spectrum stuff. But
cool.
So essentially, that's the latest thing that we're looking at doing to the community. Notice I didn't say for.
Right. Yeah, that'll be nifty. And one of the things you and I talked about was with that screen, and maybe a set of buttons on the side somewhere, like you were saying, you could navigate the sort of the setup process of picking the tap file that you want to work with those buttons instead of using a load command. And in a sense, it would be a little more like working with with a tape player, in that except that you have buttons instead of cassettes. But you'll be able to page through and pick the thing that you want to work with. So one less complication for some folks who want to work that way.
Well, it also would allow you to change files while software that's not aware of the Pico is running.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which is one thing we were thinking about, right? It's like, how could you interrupt it to be able to change the tape?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. Probably you could send messages. I mean, if we or somebody writes the appropriate code, you could send messages from the 2068 to display on the OLED too. I mean, that'd be a trivial thing to implement. Maybe someone in the community can do that part.
His first name starts with a G and ends with Gustavo.
Well, anybody, I mean, it could be Ingo. I think Ingo can work his way around Python.
But I'm not a Python expert. I only works on the assembly or C, but not Python.
I'm making my way along. Getting there.
Yeah, Gustavo, here's the thing. Learning Python is not, once I mean, it's just sort of like once you know any structured programming language, learning any other language that's reasonably structured is just comes down to syntax, right? And in my work life, I've learned enough Python to be dangerous, and then I spend my time with ChatGPT and other AIs, and I just type in, I say, write me a program that does this, and it does it.
No, but in my programming life, I program in Lua. It's another language scripting.
Yeah.
I program in Python too, or Java or Kotlin, but I prefer C. Yeah.
Spoken like a true hardcore programmer.
No, but assembly C80, 80.
Exactly.
86.
Spoken like a true hardcore programmer.
No, I can do that, but it's only for decision, not for intellectual problem. Yeah. No, I can read a program, no problem, okay. But I'm more comfortable in C or assembly, C80 assembly. Yeah.
I've not reached that level of comfort.
One of the problems is the semicolon at the end of the line. And in Python, I never see the return.
Yeah.
Okay, Gustavo, do you ever find switching back and forth between writing documentation and programming in C that you end up putting semicolons at the end of your text lines for your documents?
Exactly, because I need two heads.
Exactly. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, Carl.
Yes.
Have you been working on your projects, or have you been engaged in real life?
Well, a little bit of both. Like I said, I got the I need to do that this week. I want to look at doing that this week. This is the thing for the 2068, doing the the video, and the stereo audio. So I built one up, and I finally got in the RCA jacks that I cut up, because these should be the same things that are in there now. Who knows what 40 years brings, but it's it's the RCA jack that you plug the composite into.
Yeah.
But I cut off the the parts that go into the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Slide frame portion.
And right. So it's kind of like a piece of metal that's bent 90 degrees. You got the RCA jack, and then they bend it another 90 degrees back, so then it solders to the board. Well, we got to cut that RCA part out, which is what I did here.
Yeah.
And that's where this will sit in place of that. And like I said, I've got some solder pads, a big long solder pad on each side here to solder to these metal strips. And so what I'm going to do is, since I've got this plugged in, I'm going to have to align it so that this, you can kind of see this, you got the big fat part of the main connector, right? The main plug, and then it kind of tapers down, right? It tapers down right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the, the tip ring, whatever. Yeah. So this tapered down part actually fits in the hole of the 2068, right, where the RCA jack goes. It totally fits in there.
I mean, is it tight, or is there enough room?
No, there's it's loose, but this back part certainly won't fit.
Yes.
It's too big.
Yes.
So the thing is to kind of get this in there deep enough, because the RCA jack's kind of in there a little ways if you look at a 2068 board in the case and everything. So that's kind of why I have this set up this way, so I can plug it in, kind of lay it in there, plug this in, and make sure that it will fit through the hole, right? Otherwise, where do you solder it is going to block it, right? So you want to kind of use this as a guide so that you can solder that into these strips, these metal strips, and make a nice plug-in point, and it's also soldered down really well. So that's kind of one thing I'm going to do this week, and we'll see how that goes.
Burrell,
Yep.
what's all this in aid of? Why are you doing it? I've missed out on some meetings, so.
Well, I think I don't know if Gary Ryan can help me out here. I'm trying to think. We had talked about, me and Ryan anyway, if we did ever do something with the 2060, right, an expansion, that we would maybe put another sound chip in there and just tie it up to the same IO ports. And then it would play the same sound that the internal chip plays, but we could have the output stereo, right? So the 2060 expansion would be stereo. And but so I was thinking, well, why don't we, there's mods for the spectrums, right? And for the models that obviously have the AY chip in there, the 128 plus, I think, and the Spectrum Plus 2 and the Spectrum Plus 3, they have the AY chip already in there. So they have some mods already in Europe that make stereo conversions of those. And so I kind of took those conversions and put it into this little board here, because I guess there's two ways to output the stereo. Some people like the center channel and the right channel switched, I guess, in some of the European programs, and other ones do it the other way. So it has jumpers on there, so you can change that to match that particular, whatever sounds best, I guess. Although, once you mount this inside the case, it's in there. So it's kind of like, it's not something that's external that you can change pretty, easily, but at least if you had to, you could, go in there and swap the jumpers around. But I think that's kind of where it kind of came from, is we wanted to get stereo sound out of the AY chip, because, there's a lot of European software that does do stuff in stereo for the Spectrum. And the other thing, kind of in conjunction with this, is I was looking for some way to turn off the internal speaker. Right. So this jack, the jack has switches on it. So there's 4 switches for each one of the connection points. And so for one of those, I just basically am going to use it as a ground for the op amp inside the switching regulator, right, which is used for the amplifier inside the 2068. So basically, when you plug something in, it's going to open that switch and it'll open the ground. So you'll basically depower, I suppose that's a word. You would unpower the op amp and then basically shuts the speaker off internally, right? So I know some people have mentioned, hey, I can't, you can never shut that off, and that's true. So that's one thing that this can do. And I didn't really want to cut the case. I was just thinking, well, what's another hole in it? But I was like, well, let's, maybe I can use where the composite is at. And so I had to design the board, obviously, to put the video through, those connections as well. So it does video, left audio, right audio, and basically you don't have to modify anything on the case, right? Obviously, you're going to have to modify, well, not really modify the board, but you'll have to put this, little doodad on the board and wire things up to the AY chip, which you will have to pull up, or at least cut those, kind of manipulate those 3 pins that the audio comes out on. In my design, I'm going to just probably pull the whole chip out, put a socket in, and then when you put the chip back in, you can just kind of, bend out the pins that you don't want to go into the socket, and it's just easier for you to solder to those at that point. That way you can always, reverse your change if you ever had to, for whatever reason. And so that's kind of where all this came from. And then, and on top of that, I was going to do the power supply mod, similar to kind of what David had done. I've got these little, and I'm sure it's what David did too, but there's these little, they're,
teeny tiny. Yeah. Hold it in front of your chest.
it's a dual output, switching reg. So it puts out 5 volts and 12 volts. So I'm going to put that in there and also kind of lift up the switching regulator chip and put that in a socket and bend those pins out. That way, again, you don't have to cut any traces on the board. It's also reversible for whatever reason. And that's kind of to help with, some 26H just have a lot of hiss coming out of the speaker, if you put your ear up to it.
You don't have to put your ear
some
up
don't.
on some of the computers. It's loud enough that you can just sit and use the computer and hear it.
Sometimes, yeah. Some of them, you're right. You turn it on and you hear that hiss. It's like, is there an FM radio station? Not. But other 26.8s are pretty quiet, which is kind of just, I don't know what's going on there. But so the thing I have to do there is I've got my old Hapaj HD PVR up here, so I need to capture the audio right before I do any of these mods. I want to see how it sounds, at least on Adam's machine. And we probably need to find a machine that's kind of noisy so we can actually record that one as well. And once we get those files digitally, then we can look at the ground floor, see what kind of noise floor we're talking about on some of these things. Because we can throw that into Audacity or something like that and get a more, digitalized picture of what kind of, sound floor we're talking about on these. But anyway, with this switching regulator, hopefully that'll take the, the sound, because obviously the switching frequency is on the same die as the op amp, not the switching frequency, but the switching regulator is on the same die as the op amp in that thing. So it's not hard to think that it's going to be really, really easy for that to bleed over to the op amp and affect its output as well. So that's kind of another thing with this whole thing, is just to kind of do that as well. So hopefully I don't ruin his 2068 doing all of this, but I probably not, but there always is that risk. So I kind of been looking at that, and then also I got the boards in for the 2050 modem RS-232 thing. I think I kind of made a boo-boo on that, but we'll see. I could probably cut some traces on it and work it in there still. But I already made a revision, but I haven't ordered those boards. We'll see how this thing works out. And then I also got boards in for an internal 32K like a ZX81 TS1000 memory expansion.
Oh, nice.
Right, so it goes in place. You got to desolder the original chip, obviously, and you can either solder this in that 28 pin pin out there, or I guess you could probably put a socket in and maybe push this into it as well, so it'll still be socketed. But the problem that I had with that, well, I haven't put it in yet, but I'm thinking about it, is the cartridge, the 1510 clone thing.
Yeah.
Right. So if you use it, you wouldn't be able to use it, the 1510 cartridge with this internal expansion, which is kind of a bummer because, right. So I need to come up with a way to, I'm thinking maybe using a RAM chip select, because you got to pull that high anyway, right? Anytime you have an external RAM pack on there to turn off the internal RAM. And since this is going to be the internal RAM, I can maybe look at the RAM chip select line and say, okay, modify the 1510 a little bit so that it actually goes to the RAM chip select line and pulls it high. And then I can see that on my little board and say, oh, okay, you're using the cartridge. So it'll disable the upper 16K, right, from 32K to 48K, or 32K to what's 16 plus 32? 42? 40?
48.
Is it 48? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that, the cartridge programs live from 8,000 to 9 FFF, right? So they they would collide if you didn't turn that off somehow. Initially, I had thought, well, initially I designed this little PCB that actually, when you open the 1000's case, there's two screws that hold the motherboard down to the top of the case, right? Well, on the screw right by the edge connector, you can take that out. This is designed to fit over that hole so you can screw it down.
Oh.
It goes right to the edge connector, and it's got two surface mount switches on it with an LED next to each one. So you can, the idea is you could turn the case and you could see these switches in there with the LED on if the power's on. Of course, you probably don't want to stick something metal in there and switch these switches, if the power's on, short out something on the expansion bus. But anyway, that way at least it's, again, not cutting into the original case, but you'll have two switches. One switch will be for the M1 NOT to turn that on and off so that you can run machine code above 32K, right? And then there's you don't want that enabled if you have a 32K basic program, right? Because it's going to push the display file above 32K, and you can't have M1 NOT enabled and have the display file above 32K. So you got to have some way to turn that on and off. So that's one switch. The other switch was going to be, I'm thinking, well, maybe that way you could tell it that you want to use the cartridge, right? And it would basically disable the upper 16K of the RAM. You'd still have 16K, but you could, that way there wouldn't be any modification required to the already existing 1510s that are out there, right? So you could just switch that. Hey, I want to use a cartridge, switch it over to, I want to use a cartridge and power it up. And that way you can use that cartridge. But, like I said, I'm kind of still hemming and hawing. I'd rather not really mess with RAM chip select because, if you plug the 1510 in and you didn't have a RAM pack, the system will never boot, right? Because it's going to disable the internal RAM. So if you don't have an external RAM pack on it, then, well, the machine won't boot. But as long as you know that, right, you won't think your machine's broken. It's like, oh, I didn't put a RAM pack on, right? But this other way with using the switches inside the expansion port there, it kind of gives you, and obviously that would be for people that don't mind opening their machine up to put stuff in there. And then, kind of a lot of this is my idea to, for hot Z or high Z, I guess they call it.
Right.
High Z is, High Z puts the program in from 8,000 to, I think, AFFF, right? I think or at least it uses that upper 16K of RAM area.
Like upper 48K or around 48K.
Yeah, I know because it gives you where it puts it. It's in 8,000s and the 9,000s is what it says there. So, and this thing will have a battery on it, so it'll be battery back. So you can think that, hey, once I use the cartridge, I can load High Z, which loads into the regular 16K of RAM that every machine will have. But when you run it, I think what happens is it relocates itself into the upper RAM, right? And then it runs. And so being battery backed up there, you would only have to do that once, or, at least until it got corrupted somehow, right? And you could power off the 1000, and power it back on, and High Z would still be in there.
Yeah.
Right. So you could just randomize user, whatever calls it, and you could, you'd kind of always have that in the machine all the time, or whatever other program that you wanted to put up there. Yeah. Right. You would have it up there all the time. And that's kind of more the, kind of like Joe was looking at the Wilf, Wilf did a bunch of RAM pack schematics. That had battery backed. And it's also, this being just a 32K chip, it doesn't cover the lower, from 2000 to 3FFF. A lot of people like to put RAM there because they can put the user-defined graphics down in there. They can put like another ROM, right? That you could copy it over to from 000 to 1FFF. If you have 32K of RAM down there, you could actually copy that into what they call a shadow ROM area, right? And then you would switch for shadow ROM, and then it would replace the ROM, right? The real ROM with whatever's in the RAM that you put down there. So you could actually, you know, keep some other type of ROM for the 1000 down there. So, and that's kind of where we were getting to with this whole 1560 expansion thing, right? That's actually going to have a full 64K RAM. So it would cover the whole address space. And so you could do stuff like that with that particular project. This project is only 32K. So it just basically covers the system RAM and the upper, you know, from 32K to 48K area. I guess, you know, some designs make it so that it actually goes down into the lower RAM, but you know, that's not what this one is. The main thing here in this internal design was the M1 NOT, right? Because you actually need to either cut the traces on the board, or I'm going to probably just bend the pins out on the ULA, because this circuit this one guy designed actually connects to A14 and A15 inputs on the ULA. So it kind of controls the ULA as far as when it wants it to force it to do video generation, which is triggered by A15, you know, an M1 NOT, and of course the halt line.
Yeah.
So basically he's kind of intercepting that and creating his own little logic that controls the ULA, so he can, you know, if you have M1 not enabled, you can run machine code above 32K, and if you have it disabled, then you can start running those big, you know, basic programs that are bigger than 16K, which there are a few of out there apparently. You know, Star Trek and some other ones that I've seen that are out there that are actually larger than 16K. And but this is an internal thing, and I think a lot of people probably wouldn't mind doing that. You know, I mean, some people don't want to, and that's fine. But you know, a lot of us guys open them up to do composite mods, things like that, right? So it's not far fetched to think that, you know, hey, this is going to be pretty easy just to desolder the chip, because I know the PC board I have right now, which is that one. It's a TS1000 board, issue 3, but it's from Italy, right? It's the one that was from Italy. And it's a green solder mask on the bottom, and it actually says Timex Sinclair 1000 on it. You know, I remember posting stuff like that on the forum, right? Because we were talking about PCBs for the motherboards. So it's not the typical red one that we find in a lot of these. These actually says Timex Sinclair 1000 on them, but the RAM and the ROM are soldered. There's no sockets, right? So you'd have to desolder the RAM anyway. And so it's, you know, to solder this in there wouldn't be that hard of a deal. And it has a socket, obviously, so you can put the RAM chip in. I hope there's enough clearance there. I need to test that. But, you know, if there isn't, well, then, you know, you'll just have to solder the RAM chip onto the PCB, you know, this little expansion PCB. And then obviously you would have to, you know, put this other little board with this 2 switches on it on the bottom, right? So once you screw the motherboard down, obviously don't use the top screw by the edge connector, put this little board there, and it has 2, I lined it up with the traces and the whole, you know, already existing pads that are on at least the issue 3 board. The issue 1 board's different, I'll have to look at that, but the issue 3 board, so that way I get power and I get ground from the actual system board itself, right? You just put a little longer lead through there, and when you solder it down, it gives you mechanical, you know, it'll keep it from moving around when you do the switches. Plus you've got the screw, right, that holds down the motherboard anyway, which also would go through this board, right? And so it would hold both. And I have it designed on JLC PCB to be a 0.8 millimeter board. So it's half the thickness of a typical, you know, 1.6 millimeter PCB. I was thinking that's probably too thick, right? I don't want the regular motherboard in there and another 1.6 millimeter PCB that screw would have to go through. Yeah. So the board is half as thick. And you know, obviously it doesn't have it has some feed through, you know, some vias on it, but you know, there's nothing obviously on the bottom side, right? Because it's going to be right up against the motherboard PCB, and you would use that screw to you know, not only secure the motherboard to the top of the case, but it also kind of helps to secure this board so that it won't, you know, flop around in there when you some people have some pretty strong hands, and other people are a little bit more delicate, but I know some people are kind of, I would kind of worry about at that point if these guys are going to break the little knob, for the switch off,
Right.
being that it's a surface mount thing. But anyway, so that's kind of a lot of things, and I'm kind of sorry sometimes I take up a lot of these meetings with this stuff, but I mean, otherwise, how does this information get out? Because it just kind of stays here in my little
Your
abode,
head. Yeah.
right?
Oh, I have a question for you. Do you have a plan to use a RAM, static RAM or dynamic RAM?
Kind of got two people talking.
Yeah, somebody-
Okay. Say that again, Gustavo.
Oh, okay. No, my question
Yeah,
is if you
somebody
plan.
needs to mute their mic.
No, please go ahead. No.
Sorry, Gustavo. I was just
Oh.
saying somebody needs to mute their mic
Oh,
because
okay.
their audio's crossing
Yeah.
over. Sorry.
Would you like strawberry stuff? Wait
No,
a
my
minute.
question is if a car plan to use a static RAM or dynamic RAM.
It's static RAM. It'll be, modern
Okay.
RAM. That way I can just use, yeah.
Ah,
But
okay.
this board also does the high res mods on it too. I didn't mention that. So it has the WRG and the HRG high res mods so that you can, obviously, use the high res programs. The other thing kind of in my mind is Sponzi, right? Because that's the only thing I really have right now that I see that uses high res graphics. But of course, Sponzi, you need to use the ROM my ROM expansion to do that, right? So, but that shouldn't have anything to do with the RAM expansion because that's just for the ROM. I don't foresee any compatibility issues like with the 1510 and this internal RAM expansion because that's.
I'm not sure if you can use the cartridge plus high-res mode in the Timex 1000 or.
Well, it's not really a cartridge. It is a cartridge per se, but I think I've already shown this on the forums, on the iGroups.io, where I'm running Sponzi, and it's on the external, it's an external ROM cartridge, and it uses it's a very similar thing to the 1510 cartridge. In fact, it's the same size board, right? But the circuitry is obviously different, and the circuitry on the cartridge itself is different. But it's certainly, you can run it. It runs on the 1000, but you have to do the high res mod, right? If you don't have the high res mod, well, I Adam, he's not here, but he does have that oddball, his machine for whatever reason, because I know I didn't modify it for high res, but it worked fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the machine that I use which is my 1500 TS 1000, prototype machine. It didn't work. So maybe it's a, maybe my machine uses an issue 1 board and his uses an issue 3 board, but I'm not 100% sure what's going on with his machine where it just worked. I didn't expect it to work, but I expected it to show all the artifacting like mine does.
Right.
But his was perfectly clear. And
when I experimented with that, it was Z80s from different manufacturers would work just fine, and then others wouldn't.
Huh. Okay.
I think I went through at least a dozen different Z80s, and some worked and some didn't.
But they were different manufacturers.
But yeah, there were. I think I had 4 different manufacturers out of the batch of them.
Okay. Yeah, because I know the one that's in my machine is a Zilog, right? Is a real Zilog machine that doesn't work, right?
It doesn't work, but I'm thinking it was.
What's the NIC?
And I had to look at my notes, but I thought it was NEC or something like that.
Yeah.
NEC.
Yeah. NEC was one. SGS made a bunch of them for Sinclair.
Yeah, NEC just worked out of the box. No capacitor mod or anything.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I just plugged the Sponzi ROM in and flipped it on, and it's like, wow, this shouldn't work, but here it is. It's working fine.
Well, it's good you did some experimentation with that, so now we have a little bit more idea. I didn't open his machine to see what manufacturer his Z80 is, but I bet you're onto something there, obviously. But I know mine has a Zilog in it because I got pictures of when it was apart. and it's an original Zilog chip. So, and it didn't work. I had to put the mod in on that machine for it to work. So,
Carl, real quick, your 1510 cartridge replacement thing, are you ready to take orders from people for that?
yeah, I know I've sent a couple of emails to some people that were interested, but yeah, I mean, I built up like 4 of them. And so if anybody's interested, or put the word out that, yeah, send me an email,
Okay.
and I can certainly get that out, because I do have them built, and I've kind of moved on to doing these other things. So that's kind of why so yes, they are available, and it would obviously probably, well, I mean, both versions are available, but I think most people at this point are going to want the one with the the rotary switch on there and the displays. So you have 32 programs, right, as opposed to just the 4.
Okay.
And kind of another thing I just wanted to bring up with the Computer Fest, whatever it is, what the heck's it called?
Vintage Computer
Vintage
Fest
Computer
Midwest.
Festival Midwest.
Yes.
Is I haven't seen anything about reserving tables yet.
Haven't gotten an email about that yet. Right.
Yeah. So
I'm on the
just
VCF
kind of
like email list or whatever, and
right. Me too.
Okay.
I want to get at least one table, and I just I thought if we can kind of collaborate there with that, so we can hopefully get all of our tables in the same place.
Yeah,
it
that's
kind of
my
would
aim,
suck
too.
if we're spread out, in the venue. It'd rather be nice if we were all kind of in one place together.
Totally.
So
I agree. Yeah.
So
as soon
if
as soon
anybody
as I
gets
email, I will email you, and we'll coordinate. Like,
okay,
I
or
feel like
whoever else wants a table, but I think you were going to get 2 anyway, right?
I was
Dave,
gonna, I
or
was
somebody
like,
else.
yeah, at least 2, right? And so
Right.
that's, well, yeah. Well, you know what? Let's talk about that a little bit more in detail later, because Ingo has, we haven't heard from Ingo in a dog's age.
So you want to table the table discussion, huh?
I want to table the table discussion. Yes. We're not going to
Taking the table off the table.
That's right.
And of course, the other thing is to also collaborate with who's going to bring what.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ingo, our traveler across the country now. Ingo, you're now on the West Coast.
Yep. You can call me a gypsy. That's okay, because I married a gypsy. So we're gypsies now. All we do is move.
Well, but you have access to something that you did not have access to when you were in New York, and that would be the Pacific Coast. So finally, your surfing background photo is legit.
That's right. I've been coding for years. Now I can actually start surfing again. So we moved to Northern California. There's a area known as Mendocino, north of San Francisco, and we're leasing a house in Mendocino right now, not too far from the cliffs. We have an ocean view. It's nice. So yeah, just barely a month we've been here now.
Okay.
Is this anything like Point Break? I mean, are they gonna be like, guys, FBI agents?
Yeah, I'm gonna start fighting the locals. Yeah, I'm gonna go down to the beach and we're gonna get into fist fights and slash each other's car tires and that kind of stuff, because they're gonna say locals only. And
yeah, don't you have to grow a mullet for that, though?
I'm gonna work on that.
Okay.
You're a heck of a lot closer to Tim now than you were. So
I am.
In San Francisco,
and I don't know if you guys know, but about a year ago, I was on a job in the Bay Area, and Tim and I were able to actually hook up, hang out. He got to show me all his cool stuff, and he also gave me a bunch of neat goodies to take home with me that I still have, that I still need to play with.
Back.
Yep,
And you could
I have
sneak him into his
everything.
house.
Everything's yeah.
Okay, so one question, Ingo, what was the percentage of important stuff to household goods?
Oh well, that all depends on. Well, see, we're all biased, right? Because what we're going to consider important. That's what I saw most of. So, retro computer stuff.
Of course.
Yes.
Now, our wives might not agree with all of us, but
They just don't understand.
Right.
they just don't understand. That's right. You said it. They just don't understand. So yeah, it's good to be back with you guys. I know I've been MIA for a long time. Work and moving have completely dominated my landscape. I haven't been able to play with my stuff for months. In fact, I just got a lot of my things out of boxes from moving, and looking forward to getting back into some of my projects and not being apart from you guys and getting to hang out and see what everyone's doing and contribute. I just had a really, really small update. I wasn't actually planning on presenting anything today, but my brother purchased a new 3D printer. Um, it's really neat, actually. I'm going to share my screen. So it's this, I think it's pronounced Sheedy. It's a QIDI. 4+4. It's an enclosed filament printer. And he just let me switch.
Is that an
I should have just
actual
shared.
was that an actual photo of its output? Because it looks fantastic for a filament
Yeah,
printer.
so this thing's amazing. It's fast, it's enclosed, it'll do all kinds of different materials. And the drive belts on this thing make it so that it's a screamer. It's super fast. Um, and so he just started
Whoa.
printing a new Kilo Z case. And let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit more. And zoom. Here we go. I think that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
So let me get this share thing out of the way. You can see this thing's got like a texture to it. It's got the skin option, right? So on the slicer, it'll actually put a texture onto your 3D model, and the printer will make it. So you guys can see how this thing's got like this texture rather than seeing the filament lines, right? The layer lines that you normally see on a 3D print. And get my scroll buttons back. See if I can go to zoom. Got more
Now,
here.
if you were a 14-year-old using this, that would be the perfect place to collect, like
Oops.
peanut butter cup smudges and stuff.
Right. I'm wondering why it's not giving me my. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is a newer version of the case. It's already got the D sub for the VGA. Of course, I don't know why he installed it. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. It looks upside down to me. Yeah, I agree. The slot for the power switch, and then for the power jack right here. But yeah, you can see this texture, right?
Yeah, that's
Kind
crazy.
of neat. My printer can't do that, at least not unless I probably do a firmware update or something, or do something with a different slicer.
Ingo, do you know if that texturing slows down the print speed?
So I would guess that it might have some minor effect on it, but for the time that it took him to print this, I would say maybe insignificant.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that. Like, look at and so what he did is he printed this thing at basically a 30-degree angle. So rather than having it flat
Okay.
on the build plate, he put support material in to angle it at 30 degrees so that when he changed filaments, rather than the color changes going vertically,
Yeah.
he's got this like cool racing stripe effect going on the case, which I think is super cool.
It's the GT
And
model.
obviously you could do like different nationalities, different countries' flags. Like if you wanted your case to be, Italy or Portugal or Brazil or Germany or whatever, right? You could do it in your own country's colors, um, or whatever you want to do, right? I think it turned out really neat. The super cool thing about this printer is the support materials are usually such a pain to remove. And he made me a little video of him getting this thing off the build plate and then pulling all the support material off. And it was very easy. He didn't have to do any other cleanup afterwards. Um, yeah, it turned out really cool.
That entire
There's
thing
the
fit in the that entire thing fit into the build volume, Ingo?
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So this thing's got, let's see, let me go back to the dimension. Oops, shoot.
The
Let me
picture you
see
showed
it.
at the very beginning gave the dimensions.
So yeah, and it's actually, let me share the let me change
Well,
my screen share
looks
here.
like it's actually sitting on top of the printer, right?
Yeah.
That's a
So here it
pretty
is.
big printer.
It's 305 millimeters by 305 millimeters by 280 millimeters build volume. So
Yeah.
pretty good
Wow.
size. Oh yeah, it says it even right there on the
On the
front
front
of
of
the
the
thing.
thing,
You're
yeah.
right. Yeah, it says it right there.
It's not even that expensive either.
Right.
No, it's
No.
$800 basically. I mean, here they're saying 799, so yeah, $800. Oops. Um, and yeah, so he saved some money for a few months, just put a little money aside every month, and he pulled the trigger. And let me see. I should just I can stop share. I don't think I pulled down any of the videos, but at any rate, so that's just a little brief update on where we've been going with the Kilo Z case. So I had him make a new version with the D sub for the VGA, so that from um, the ZX Westby, right, there'd be an option. So if somebody wanted to just have the composite video output, they could. If they want the VGA output, they could do that. And it's just print one or print the other one.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at taking my perf boards, the perf board RAM expansion and the perf board adapter for the Westby, and unifying it into maybe one adapter board. And Carl sparked my interest on the last meeting where he was talking about kind of some of the stuff that he's looking at doing. So he and I are gonna connect and chit chat and share some ideas for making uh, an upgrade possible without breaking out the soldering iron. And since the Kilo Z case is as big as it is, you've got a lot of room if you had to stack a board or put in an adapter or something. So I think there could be some neat possibilities there. And that's all I wanted to share. Just a
Cool.
real quick update and a howdy do.
Are those STL files available someplace?
So we'd be more than glad to share one with you. We're not done yet. We're still kind of tweaking some stuff, but yeah, I do want to make everything available so that anybody with the means can print their own. We also hope to maybe have either, I don't know if there would be resin printed or injection molded or silicon molded, resin cases made that people could just buy. So we'd like to have a few different options out there. Once we get a little closer to being done with everything, which I think we're very close with having something more complete, I was hoping to get a little survey out to the community and kind of see what people would be interested in, how many people want to build their own or just have parts of it to play with, or what people would want to like have one completely ready to go, plug and play. Um, so yeah, but I do plan on making everything available to the community no matter what. So
Cool. Cool. Thanks, Ingo.
Yeah.
Can I ask a
nifty.
stupid question?
There are no stupid questions.
Oh, you haven't heard any of mine yet. What is this case made for?
The case?
Yes.
So, here. Let me turn off my background and I'll be able to.
No, I like that you can pull this stuff out of the sunset.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna spotlight you again.
So there you go. So this is the Kilo Z case.
That's a ZX81 in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually a TS1000, and I've got a ZX West B in there. I've got my own homemade 32K RAM upgrade in there. I've got the heat sink of all heat sinks, the Terminator version. Get into Choppa, and yeah,
And don't forget
and then
the
it's got
keyboard.
yeah, these are
Actual keys.
mechanical
Oh my God.
mechanical
I don't
keyboard.
think I can handle that.
Let's see
It's
here.
very
Get
cool.
a close up. See if it'll zoom in. Yep. There's
Yep.
the keyboard. Those are water transfer decals that I created in Inkscape
Yeah.
vector drawing program. And so yeah, and actually one of the other things that I'm working on right now, give you another little update, is these keys stick out pretty high. I just bought some low profile mechanical switches with low profile keycaps. So I think that it'll scale better with this size case. But this form factor, like I was saying, you've got a lot of room in here. So it makes expansion a lot easier and upgrading easier. So Carl, you know what we're going to talk about. Be ready.
Hey,
And I'm
Ingo,
guessing. Go ahead.
Ingo, do you have a 1000 handy so you can show the size difference?
Yeah, side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys give me just a second, I'll run out to
Okay.
the garage and grab one. Hang
Okay.
on.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll riff while he's gone. But yeah, David, Ingo's been working on that for Ingo and his brother have been working on that for, I want to say, more than a year, maybe a couple of years now, and he 3D printed the little keyboard module, so you could, with the holes, so you could stick the keys in the switch, and and then he went to circuit board, and Ingo's back. Hang on, Ingo.
Okay.
Okay. Oh wow, that's a pretty.
So Ingo, yours is the size it should have been.
Yeah. It
Well,
really is a
that
nice
was the
size.
whole point. That was the whole point, right? When I saw the ad in the magazine for the ZX81 and placed my order, and the thing showed up, and I opened the box, I was like, what's that? It's way too small. I expected something about the size of an Atari 400 because my buddy had an Atari 400. And I was like, even for my little 13-year-old hands, I was like, man, that keyboard's kind of tight. And so, I started thinking the one thing that I really wanted on my computer was more of a proper keyboard. And so that's how it all started. I made the keyboard as a prototype from a piece of acrylic that I laser cut and just kind of glued in mechanical switches and hand wired it. Actually, David, do you still have it?
Yeah, I do. I use it as a test keyboard.
Yeah, so that was the first prototype, but that gave me the dimensions. And then I gave those dimensions to my brother, and he went into his CAD program and built a 3D model of this case. And the case was sized off the keyboard. So the keyboard was the main design constraint.
Yeah.
Is approximately the same space that the 2068 or more bigger?
So my
itself?
2068 is still in a box.
Yeah, the 2068
But
keyboard's bigger than that.
2068's longer, and
Yep.
yeah, the keyboard, the keys are, more small and rectangular.
Okay.
Well, but Ingo,
Yeah.
the keys, oddly enough, the keys on the 2068 are
It's a
the standard
standard
space.
pitch, I think.
They're standard
Yeah.
pitch. Yes.
Okay.
It's weird, but
Okay.
they are,
Okay.
But yeah, the for I guess there's just more keys on the 20. Yeah,
There's got to be more keys. I mean, you have bigger
Well, you've
keys,
got
right?
the enter key is wide, and then you've
Yeah.
got
And is there only
you got
10
the
across?
you got the shift keys on the
Mhm.
edges.
Yes, and a symbol shift and a break key on the bottom row. Plus
Yeah,
the
it's
shifts.
it
That's what
uses
drives out
it.
that width.
Yeah, it still
Yeah.
uses the same keyboard matrix that
Yep.
the Spectrum uses or the ZX81 uses. I'm sure they just wired it up so that you could have these special extra keys in different places, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because break and shift, break and the space bar on the 2068 are the same thing.
And I hate to do this to you, Ingo, but I'm just kind of thinking in my head now is I think it would be kind of nice if we did have a real space bar on the 1000.
Well, that's so.
Yeah.
So they're actually another. We started out with the Mega Z. The Mega Z would have the full space bar, full shift keys, and maybe even and full enter key and things like that. So I'm sure there's a way to map out the key matrix in a way that you could have
Right.
a real full size keyboard and something that is more compliant to what most touch typists would be accustomed to. But I decided that for a first iteration, it just made sense to stick to the standard 40 key layout with everything the same size and kind of just keep it simple at first and then see how much, interest or demand there would be for something like that. But that would be cool. I find that if I'm typing on that keyboard for a while, my mind kind of rewires back to, what do I do to get this certain key combination. Uh but yeah.
And was it shift enter to get function? If I
Yep.
recall correctly.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
The other
I think Carl, you meant a not a space bar, but a break bar.
Well, that's space/break.
Because people forget though that on the 81 that's break without any shift. That was one of the
Right.
changes that they made, and so that made it very awkward to write your own basic program for a lot of things.
A lot of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That would be a nice change if we could make that different in a compatible way.
David, I think it's on your Google Drive is this design, right?
I think so. And you know what? We should just put that in
cool.
the GitHub. Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
you
yeah,
know
it's got
what?
the triple wide space and the extra keys.
You know what that
Nice.
looks like, Joe? It just occurred to me. That looks like the PET 2001.
Kind of.
What?
Yeah. But yeah,
Oh,
this is
nice.
the one I made up. So I shared the STL files for the keycaps and the keys and why is that doing that? Anyway, this base. I think it's
Yeah.
on the Google Drive for the
Yeah,
the
let's
team.
let's put that up on the GitHub so it's available
Okay.
to everybody. We'll do that.
And there's also a circuit that allows you to have these dedicated single button function keys, like the function,
Edit.
what is it? Edit,
Edit,
graph.
math,
graph,
yeah, all
break.
these
Nice.
other ones. So there's a PCB that I designed that has all those functions on it, so it's really easy to wire up.
Nice.
So, yeah, you can't really see it,
Very nice.
but yeah, that it may be something you want to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
and also I noticed the opening right for the top of that. It is that just a plastic cover that, or 3D printed cover that
Yeah,
goes on
yeah. So
there? 'Cause I was
there's
thinking,
a go ahead.
well, I was thinking you could probably put like an LCD screen on the top of it that could hinge,
Mhm. So
right?
my brother has a version like that that he's
Hmm.
just got sketched. Actually, no, I think he actually modeled it already. It's got a hinge, so it's kind of like a TS 1000 laptop, right? With
Right.
the LCD screen that comes up, and that is one thing that's kind of on the drawing board. Um, One of the things that we've played around with already, and I presented in a previous meeting, is that on that lid, I have ZX81, or excuse me, it says Kilo Z in a clear, um, wasn't PLA, it's the other material, and now I'm drawing a blank.
A clear
But at any
filament.
rate, in it, pardon?
A clear filament.
Yeah, yeah, but it was just any rate. So yeah, clear filament, printed out the letters Kilo Z and stuck it into the black cover, and then put LEDs behind it. And so it lights up when you flip on the power switch. So like a, power on indicator that's also the badge for the computer.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking if I can maybe even get some spare pins off the ZX Westby, off the ESP, use that to maybe even run LEDs back and forth like the Knight Rider.
Well,
or like a Battlestar Galactica Cylon.
Right.
Okay, so one
so-
other question, Ingo. Is there room under the keyboard to maybe put a LiPo battery?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of room in the case under the keyboard, and so that's an excellent idea, right? Because then you really could have, especially if you did the mobile version with its own screen, right? You would
Yeah.
have a TS 1000 mobile unit laptop, uh, palm top.
And Ingo, if you could get an orange display, then it could be like a TS 1000/grid computer.
Mhm.
Or 1000 actual grid, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
You realize to anyone listening into this, we are just totally gonzo.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Could get
If
a
if
TS
they've listened,
TS
if they've listened
1000
this far
laptop.
into it, it's their own fault.
you need a Sinclair flat screen TV to go with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's right.
yeah.
There you go.
What were you gonna say, Ryan?
Well, TS 1000 laptop, living the dream.
That's right.
Back
What
in the
more do you
day,
need?
where's the
Let me.
camera?
Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
I got my
Yep,
81.
the Watchman.
got-
The Watchman.
Yeah, I got my 81 to display on this guy.
Oh my god.
Oh, nice.
You had to, what was it? Yeah, attach one to the antenna, and then
Yeah.
the other connector to like a screw for ground.
No way.
And then-
And then it was the tiniest little K cursor you ever saw.
Ryan, did you have a Fresnel lens in front of it to like in Brazil?
Right?
No, that would help. I heard Sinclair may have done something like that.
yeah.
The problem with the Sinclair one was the battery is real weird, so you have to use an AC adapter.
Tim, didn't it have a Polapulse battery in it or something? A Polaroid
I
battery?
want to say they were from the Polaroids. I
Yeah.
think they were a flat
I'm gonna-
battery pack. I don't think
Yeah.
I've got one. I've got the TV, but not the battery.
I'm gonna tell my brother to modify the case for the LiPo battery, Jeff. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. If there's room in there for the battery, then yeah, you could have a totally portable system.
You really could. Yep. That would be sweet.
You could take it to the beach when you're surfing.
Yeah, you can take it to the coffee
That's
shop
right.
when you're.
That's
you know,
right.
uh-huh.
Next time my wife asks to borrow a laptop, I'll give her that one.
There you go. That's awesome. Love
If
it.
you do that, David, we'll all pitch in for your funeral.
Yeah, you'll probably
You always give her a Z88. They're pretty decent.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
Except the screen on that is just fucking hard to read.
It's not
Yeah, but
that bad. I used my Z88 for a few years.
I used mine as well. So until the screen finally gave up.
I liked this. I could go, so it was 8 lines of display. I could log into a Unix system, set lines equals 8, and then I can use my VI or Net News, and it was fine with only 8 lines of display because you give me, you tell me 8 lines, I'll only give you 8 lines. Worked great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, it's like it's just like the Model 100, right? The Trash 80 Model 100. That I think had eight lines by
Yeah,
40 or
16. Oh, the
something
100,
like that.
yes. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was,
and it's but the screen was much bigger. I mean, obviously the pixels it was huge. It was probably twice as the size of the well, not width-wise, but height-wise, it's twice the size of the Z88 screen.
Much thicker too than the Z88. Z8 was more thinner and nicer to carry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
I've got two Z88s finally. So actually, one of them doesn't work. I think the glue logic chip on it is toast, but the other one works fine.
Do you have the topper that goes with it though?
Excuse me?
You know what the topper is? Do you have the topper?
I don't think so. That's not ringing a bell.
The
this a
Z88
thing-
has so to turn it on and off, you hit the 2 shift keys.
Right.
But if you set something on the keyboard, it eventually causes the machine to crash. So there was something called the topper, which was a piece of plastic that was formatted. It's almost like plastic / fiberglass, formatted to cover the Z88 and keep the something from touching the shift keys.
Just
Yeah,
the
I don't
shift
have
keys?
that.
Yeah, the 2 shift keys. So it was constantly pulling the 2 shift keys. You touch them together, it would suddenly come alive. But again, if you put something like a book on top of it, or put it in your backpack or something and carried it with you, it would crash the machine. You have to reset it.
Oh.
So I had to eventually buy the topper because I wanted to carry it with me. So, and it was a great solution. It wasn't terribly expensive, but it was a great solution. Still got it here somewhere.
That reminds me of I can't remember which model of Apple it is. It might have been just like the plain old Apple II. The reset key was like in the upper right, and the cheap solution for it was to put a cassette tape box over that key. Because it was the same location that everybody else had their delete or backspace key. And so, you'd be programming away on the Apple in your in your classroom, and instead of backspacing, you hit the reset button, and then it was time to go to gym.
When I was working at Timeshare, I worked with a lady that used a VT terminal of some sort, and there's one key. If she hit it, it basically bombed her out of the program she was using, and there went 2 hours of work. So she's like, "Can you fix this?" I'm like, "Well, let me do this." So I basically opened the keyboard, cut out some black tape, electrical tape, put it over the pad where that one key was, and just made the key no longer work.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Bit of a kludge, but it solved her problem. Every time she hit it, it totally failed to work. So not a problem.
Nice. Yes.
Of course, somebody probably came along later and goes, "Why is this key broken? It won't work." But
Yeah.
I wasn't worried. That was 84, 83, 84, something like that.
And then when they called the help desk be like, well, it works for me.
Another one I remember at Timeshare was we had a Tektronix terminal, and my boss said, "Oh, take this over to Tektronix and have them fix it." Okay, so I take it over there, and they go, "Oh, this was borrowed a while back from us. You never paid for it, so thanks for bringing it back." I had to go back to the office saying they kept it.
Oops. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
Hey, I'd like to go back and ask Carl about the, let's see, which one in the flurry of things. 2068 audio board.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had on that was kind of a while you're in there thought of basically kind of we talked about a lot of the things about the 2060, you know,
Right.
and one of which was at least for me saying, okay, what could we bring out? You know, the 2060 notion was going to bring out the RGB, right? Is another thing we kind of talked about having that on there as well. But then, of course, the problem with the intensity, right, not being there on the bus would come up. And as I remember, because it's been a while since that was discussed, was you'd have to go in and solder a wire somewhere to pick that off. I think. But it seemed like the possibility was, well, if you were in there and you grabbed the RGB off the board somewhere, you could get the intensity and then put that into a circuit to combine it.
Well, I know for the 2068, there's no place on it technically to get intensity. But what I think you probably could do is you could look at the YVU signals and somehow
convert that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, obviously intensity is going to come through on those, and if you look at like the spectrum, how it does it a lot of times, it's pretty simple. You know, they just send the intensity line that is in the spectrum. They just got some diode logic or three diodes that go to the RGB, and it like pulls them higher, right, for brighter colors, right? That's kind of the way it's a pretty simple circuit to me, but yeah, I think. I think there's probably some way we could do it on the 2068, looking at the YUV video signals, see where the intensity, obviously it's going to be a brighter color. So how do we, it's possible, but, something obviously we'd have to dive into, but I have no. Go ahead.
Okay. So there's not like a intensity pin there in the 2068. No. So what you said. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so
yeah, it's all internal to the damn chip, which unfortunately.
Okay, so we'd have to basically because I'd found a circuit that like if you had intensity and RGB, then you could mix them. But we'd have to actually just convert YUV instead. But I think there's stuff for that to do. Anyway, point really is, on yours, you had also passed the composite out because you're taking over the hole for that jack. And I thought, well, if you could grab the RGB, and then you would pass some circuitry that we can convert it. Although we just as discussed that instead of we would just be converting YUV over. Could you put all of that on the board, and then instead of the connector that you have, you put it out on the Sega connector? And so you can put the composite in there. You can put the stereo and mono audio as well as RGB into a thing I think will also fit in the same hole.
Yeah, like a mini DIN connector. Yeah.
Well, as near as I could tell from measuring the connector I have, might fit there. Maybe, but that was just a thought, not to replace this, but as an alternative output.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. Like I said, using a mini DIN, the kind of reason I went with the like the earphone, the tip sleeve ring kind of deal is because it's kind of easy to get those plugs off the shelf that have a audio and two audio outs and a video out. I don't know that I've seen a mini DIN. I mean, we'd have to make our own, but it's certainly possible. But I don't think there's any mini DINs out on the market that kind of break it out into those individual RCAs. You know what I'm saying? It's not something we could make. That's
Well,
easy enough to do.
That's a Sega connector.
Yeah, there's a.
Oh, is the Sega connector
Yeah, the
come out
9
too?
Yeah.
mini DIN is like a Sega Genesis or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it already comes out to RCA jacks.
Well,
Right. I get that, but what's the other end? Is it a big?
Well, what you would? Yeah, give me a sec.
Yeah, okay. It can go to.
Well, it's just AV stereo.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, this is one breakout, right? So it's the.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, so it brings it out to.
So I use this on. I'll get it off of here.
But Ryan, Sega is Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
your mic
muted.
cut out, Ryan. Oh, you muted yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that's the thing David used on his board.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And so I just take one of the, with my little mod for the audio to, I guess, make this equivalent to some later revs where the stereo audios are connected to the mono audio. Because this only picks off stereo audio. The RF, the Sega DIN to RF picks off the mono audio, I believe. Anyway, you just pop that in there, and then I can get the composite and stereo audio. Well, not really stereo, but audio through here. But then I got the other one, which is the one that is the HDMI adapter. And
so you're kind of saying, I think what you're trying to say is maybe, combine what's David has on that video board internally into the 2068 and come out with this mini DIN connector. That way it has a composite, it has left and right audio, it has RGB, and then it can go to the Genesis HDMI
and it all comes out that hole in the back.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, that's
and if we can convert, and if we can pick off the pins and convert YUV to the RGB with intensity.
Yeah, I know. I built a board Dave sent me that does kind of do that. Supposed to convert YUV to what the hell does it convert it to? VGA? Does it convert it to VGA or?
Gosh, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. It's actually still hooked up to my Tony 68, but
is it analog RGB?
Yeah,
it might.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a thing called RGBI, which I guess is where the intensity is separate, but
right. And that's what Timex should have done, but they didn't. The other thing kind of pops into my mind is, could we use a PAL 2068 SCLD, which does have intensity, but the problem with that is it's going to be in PAL, right? So, but if we could convert that to like an HDMI thing, I don't know that would be a problem. Because I think anything, well, not anything, but most HDMI systems will take either one nowadays, right? I don't think it's as big a deal as it would be for an analog TV or something like that, which needs to have special circuitry, right, to deal with PAL signals. But I think most HDMI TVs can take 50 or 60 hertz or PAL or NTSC or, they kind of, it's all irrelevant to them these days, So maybe that's something to look at as far as, but then again, where are we going to get PAL SCLDs? They aren't, you can't go to AliExpress and pick up a dozen of those guys for nothing. So I think we still probably, I know David looked at that, and I built the board. I tried it out, and it was horrible video. I did get something out.
Okay.
But it was just horrible, crappy artifacting. So I mean, there's probably some adjustments we need to put on there, or maybe look at another thing that maybe has come out since that maybe digitizes that, and then we can do more of it in a digital domain, and fix it that way. But because David's board was all analog, just nothing but a bunch of resistors and I think a couple of level shifting chips, maybe, or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So,
Analog
and right. And so, I mean, I think we probably might be able to do something with that if we change some resistor values or, things like that. We're going to have to fine tune it. But your board doesn't really have any of that, right? It's all just resistance. So there's no place, we'd have to kind of bodge in some VRs in there, right? Where we can actually adjust value of resistances for certain ones of those things. And maybe we can actually dial in a better picture. But yeah, I mean, it's still hooked up to my 26.8 that I have it on. So, but it's just, yeah, we were looking at that at one point to try and take the YUV and convert it to, analog RGB with intensity. Because obviously it's there. It's in the YUV signal. It's just, how do we pull that out? And not even really probably worry about the YUV crap. Right, we already got RGB. We just need to get the intensity. We just need to get the intensity signal out of there somehow. What's the level shift there that we can look at and say, oh, it's high intensity is bright now.
Won't you be remixing it back with the other RGB to get it?
No, because that's already built into the SCLD too, and that's more, to me, it's more pure, right? That is actually RGB. Analog RGB, why even try to recreate that, right? That's already there, but we just need to get some way to pull out an intensity signal that we know that it's a bright color or a not bright color, right? And it has to obviously be timed. It has to be timed with the RGB signal so that, when it goes to the monitor, the monitor is going to interpret it as a bright color as opposed to a dim color. I can't just, so I guess what I'm trying to say, that all would have to be synchronized somehow. But the YUV signal is already synchronized with the RGB stuff anyway. So I mean, I think it would probably be maybe it would be it would already be aligned. We would just need to figure some way to look at the YUV signal. And see if we can see the voltage change there between a bright color and a standard color. Mm-hmm. And then we would go to basically just go to an inverter or a couple of NAND gates to give it some buffering, right? And then send it out. That's your intensity signal. Or how do they do that on analog RGB? That's not RGBI, that's more digital RGB. If you have RGBI,
RGBI is digital. Analog is it. I mean, and we talked about this a really, really long time ago on the list, and someone did some captures of the color bars on an oscilloscope, I think, to show the physical distance in signal levels. It's very small from regular thing to to the intense color. It'd be very difficult to extract, I think.
I
mean, maybe Jeff can do
it. David, that's so funny. I was gonna say that. I was gonna say the same thing. Maybe Jeff could do it. He'd write an FPGA that could do it.
He would write an FPGA to do it. Yes,
that's right.
Well, maybe that's what we do is we just get Jeff's FPGA and put it on an internal board. Maybe a simpler FPGA that just does the video stuff. You know, it just kind of looks at the video memory and puts out a HDMI signal or an RGB signal or something like that.
Well, you know, actually, Carl, one of the things that sometimes happens to folks is that their RAM gets toasted, right? And on my I have a Tandy Model 200, which is the clamshell version of the Model 100, right? And someone came out with a circuit board that plugs into the two RAM chip sockets, but it doesn't plug into all of the pins because it doesn't need all the pins. It just needs, like the extra one pin from the second socket to, get that select. We could make a replacement RAM board that, if your RAM chips, get toasted, you pull those things out and you throw in some sockets and plug in, a little circuit board that has static RAM on it that maps to, all 48K worth of RAM and has, Jeff's little magic board for generating BGA.
Yeah, that could be. Well, they have something similar to that where obviously they use the Spectrums, right? So a lot of people, they're 40, the original rubber key Spectrums, those RAM chips will go bad, and they have these boards already made, just like you said. They plug in, you take all the old RAM chips out, you line this board up to where the holes are for where the old ones went, and you push it down and you solder. These pins are kind of in different places.
Yeah.
But they pull the required lines that they need, right, for the static RAM, and that's exactly, they modernize it basically, to a static RAM.
Yeah.
But see, then you start getting into things where, hell, man, we could do bank switching now because we can get bigger RAM chips.
Yes.
We can do battery. We can do battery backed up, so you could have programs staying in your 2068 all the time.
Hey, can I share real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
What I found.
Okay.
Wow, what's this?
Looking
at YRGB to digital.
What's that thing down?
Looks like a FPGA or something because it's got a lot of I/O lines.
Yeah.
It's an ISP LS. I don't know what the heck that is.
LSI 1016E. Let's look that up.
Either FPGA or CPLD, right?
Yeah, a fairly small one, but I guess it's got clamp there.
Yeah, what is it?
An old lattice part.
I found it on this page. I'll toss the link in.
It's a CPLD.
But I think with CPLD was mentioned somewhere.
Yeah, it's a lattice
that's
semiconductor.
The math. That's the math that kind of, like I said, his analog board kind of does.
Correct.
Through resistors and things like that, it combines the lines.
The op amps. It does it through the
right.
The op amp is your classic.
You can use a CCA monitor. That is the resolution and frequency. The vertical frequency is 15 kilohertz in CCA. Is RGB.
Anyway, the point was just that there's circuits that could go from the YEV, I think. So.
Well, I've never seen this one before, because I've been looking, for something that can do this, and yeah, I found some things, but they were like ridiculously expensive for what you're doing. They were like $120, $130 for this thing, and all you're doing is converting YUV to RGB. I don't think anybody's going to spend that kind of money to do that, right? So this, obviously it's going to be a little bit more. It won't be that expensive.
Well, here's a different one. BG part is omitted. Sync on RGB. And it gives this diagram.
Oh wow, they got rid of the FPL or the CPLD, and it's just using. There's a bunch of your op amps there,
That's correct. Yeah.
David.
Yeah. There's your analog math.
And
But
it's got
David,
a. Go ahead.
Yeah, they do
Oh.
differentiation, integration, whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question about the video and the Timex is that it's noisy because of noisy power supplies and I hate to say shoddy design, but let's say shoddy design, right?
Let's say thrifty design.
Ah, thank you.
Is that what that was?
But you can use the TTL levels. You don't have noise on those output for TTL.
Yeah, exactly. If you could get the TTL, then you could post process it and turn it into something reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that is near to the CCA specs, the video for Timex. CCA, the CCA support intensity control.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it also works in 15.7 kilohertz. So
Yes.
Well, like I said, this design here is new to me. I've never seen this before, but then again, I haven't been looking recently. So maybe this is fairly new. Does this website have like a
No,
like a page on it?
This website's been around for a while. I've seen
Okay.
this.
Yeah, this is a thing I found before when we were talking about 2016. I was poking around.
Yeah.
And
Because
but anyway, the point is that this could be put on, or certainly have to test it, see if this would even work.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, oh yeah.
But I think like you could make another thing but it was just part of me gathering ideas for some sort of 2060 thing. But then at some point you realize, okay, I'd have to have some sort of cable at least that you would solder stuff inside to bring out, you have to do the sound mod so you could bring the audio lines out. And you have to bring the YUV out or have a thing that converted to bring the RGB with intensity out to this expansion box. And then when you did this thing, I thought, oh, we'll just put that part of it inside and then not worry about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would be certainly willing to, make a board for this because it looks like they have the board design, so I could just send that off and spend the $2 or $4 for them to make me 5 of these things and populate it up and see what happens. I don't know that it would work.
Most of these chips should be available in surface mount. Let's see.
Yeah, they look like they have board designs. If he scrolls down, I think, or on the other page, I thought they had board designs already. Go back to the web page. Yeah, see, they got circuit board, part side, solder side. I don't know that those are. Oh wow! Okay,
that's perf board.
Well, yep. Oh, look at that work.
So we would.
He had this guy here.
Okay, so we would just have to put all his parts into. We'd have to build the schematic up in Easy EDA and just make our own board apparently. So not a huge deal, but.
Oof.
But I've never seen this page. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I missed that somehow. But so yeah, if you could send a link to that, that would be great.
It's in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that's still kind of a thing that I would like to do. Is like I say, take the YUV and get real intensity RGB out of it. So.
Okay.
Because I know that's kind of why I even got that board from you, David, is, let's kind of start somewhere with it and see what we get with it. And like I said, I did build it and hook it up and it did output a signal, but it's just, you can't really see anything because there's all kinds of artifacting and crap all over the place on it. So I was like, wow, this is horrible. But, hey, it did put something out though, at least, so. But I will, I'll look at that and see if maybe I can throw that into.
Look at different op amps, Carl, because that one's $5 a pop in surface mount.
Ouch! Holy shit!
I think it's
I
all
don't know
right.
why he's got to.
Well, before you replace them, you need to look at the gain bandwidth product, the noise floor,
Right.
and a bunch of
Yeah.
other things. It may turn out you need $5 a pop because
Yeah.
you don't want differential phase across your RG and B. That would be, I think that's called a bad thing.
Whatever. It puts the NT
Well, do
in
they have?
NTSC.
Well, do they
Yeah.
have dip parts? Are the dip parts cheaper? Probably not. If they're $5 for surface mount, they're going to probably be
Yeah, I
the
didn't
same
look.
for
Yeah.
for dip. I'm surprised they use op amps that expensive. I mean, can't a regular?
Well,
I mean,
I-
it's just video signals.
I hate to say it, but in my previous life, $5 an op amp, pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing uses how many though? I think that I saw at least 6.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
Ryan?
There were
I know
also-
there was.
Oh.
Was go ahead.
Oh, there are also a number of MSX machines that used a separate board in them, and they, transfer the same signals either to PAL or to NTSC, depending on what region the machine was being sold in. So the main board was the same, but they had this little daughter board that sat on top that converted the video signal.
And the video signal in those was YUV.
Yeah, they were all YUV on the main board.
Okay.
And then this other board plugged in to a connector on top and either changed it from YUV to NTSC or YUV to PAL or even CCAM. I think there was some
Right.
CCAM units. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those schematics floating around from the MSX line of machines
Right.
that show exactly how to do that conversion pretty cheaply. I mean, they were cheap back then. So
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to look at that too, because that's, like I said, if I'm on board with it, Ryan. I mean, if we can get YUV and RGB, I'm all for it. Especially if we can do it cheaply enough, right? And
yeah,
because I mean the CPLD that's on that one schematic he has, that's probably, I don't know, a $10 part maybe itself. Or maybe cheaper. I don't know. It didn't seem to be that complex of one.
Well, yeah, I think some of the, like you said, the first one, maybe it was the first two. Yeah, the first two, I guess, that's providing composite
Oh,
as
okay.
well. And so the other one where that's omitted, or well, actually, I don't quite understand. You'll have to read the page. I don't quite
Okay.
understand, but
Gotcha.
anyhow, so yeah, I mean that I think, I guess the only one I didn't quite understand was like, so you're not for the speaker cutout, you're doing something else other than the classic physical cutout of the jack, or is that what you're using?
Like I said, I'm actually cutting power to the op amp through the switch because that's the ground line anyway.
But you're using the physical switch of the phono jack going in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the jack that. So when you
Okay,
plug
so we
something
could-
in, it pushes it up and it breaks that connection.
All right. So that would be the thing you couldn't do with the DIN.
Right. Well, you could, if there's enough pins, you could have 2 pins that were like jumpered, right? So when you plug it in, they get jumpered. Or, something like that where, it could, you could control something that way, or, but then again, you're taking pins away from maybe other things that you really want. So we'd have to see, I guess you could use one pin and either, pull it high inside the machine, and when you plug something into it, it grounds it, right? Something like that. So you could, it's normally high when it's unplugged and it's grounded when it's plugged in. So then you could use that to control something. I definitely do want to be able to shut the internal speaker off. But again, this is just, how many people are going to actually really get this thing? I don't, 5, 10 people, maybe.
Didn't you ask that question of yourself when you were making those 1510s?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that had a little bit more. Well, especially since you came up with that program that converts the ROMs, I mean, the P files into ROMs.
Yeah, that
Because
makes it
now
more
we can,
universal.
now we can, basically put any time, 1000
Cooking
ZX81
with
program on a
gas.
cartridge. Yeah. But this, I don't think too many people are gonna be want to go in there and popping their sound chip out and blah blah blah. Plus, there's only certain height there, right? I mean, with a socket on there and the chip in there, you're barely clearing it down on that side of it on the case. Because, like I said, I built that 2068 test machine that I got from you, the one that was dead or whatever, and it's got socketed everything, right?
Yeah.
And
I
even
still
the
think it is
SCLD.
the most amazing thing is that here's this thing I bought a long time ago, thinking, oh, it's dead, but maybe some of the parts are useful. And then Carl fixes the whole thing.
Yeah.
And now it's living a new life as a tester.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, if I got another 2068 machine, I wonder if the sound chip's good. Okay, well, I'll just pull it out of my test machine and throw it into that one, right? And then you can test it. And even the SCLD, right? I had to get a PLCC socket, right, and desoldered the original one and put the socket in, and so yeah, I could do SCLDs as well. But good luck if I'll ever find one of those free. But I mean, if a machine has, like, maybe a machine's dead and we can't figure out why, and we can always desolder the. At least desoldering that thing is much easier, right, than soldering it back down.
Well, yeah, I
Desoldering
mean,
it's
all
a
you got to
piece
do
of
is watch
cake.
one of those cell phone disassembly videos, and you learn how to desolder the SCLD in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I just remember when I did that one, I have a little mini hot plate and I put it right over that. And God, I actually kind of burned the bottom of the board. It didn't ruin anything, obviously, but you look at the bottom of the board and it's all discolored right there where the SLD would be. So,
Well, David,
but look,
David, since Adam isn't here,
Yes,
we're 5 minutes from.
yeah.
Yes. So
I can't wait for him to watch this video later with all the references to him and everyone trying to how many it took like 4 of us to cover for him, didn't it?
Yeah.
It takes a nation to cover for Adam. Mm-hmm.
That's
He's
right.
here.
That's right.
He's here in spirit.
Always. Always.
So our next meeting is Sunday the 16th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Eastern time, and for Ingo that's, I don't know, 3 hours earlier, 11, something like that.
Yep.
I think that's dude time.
Dude time, yeah.
Dude.
Or as I said to Ingo the other day,
California,
oh,
not
it's
northern.
3 hours ago for you.
Well, he's in the same time zone Tim is. So,
Yeah. It's 3 hours ago for Tim too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just coming up on 8. So yeah.
And hey, Christian, you had asked about music software. I think you meant software that played tunes. Is that right?
Well, excuse me. I think so.
Okay.
Although I had audio recordings in mind.
Well, there's not enough. Well, I won't say that there's not enough bandwidth because somebody can prove me wrong on that. But there are programs that take advantage of the AY sound chip in the 2068. And before you joined, we were talking about Byte Power magazine, and some of the stuff that I have archived off of those tapes are little mini jukebox programs that play 5 or 6 different tunes. I'm going to tell you, they're not really exciting tunes. They're older, but
Well,
they may
that's no
you.
problem.
And I'll post a link on the email list, and you can listen to the AY chip in all its glory. It's 3-note glory.
Well, it's better than nothing at all.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Okay. So what is this? This is the third. So that's 2 weeks from now, roughly. Yeah. Okay. And maybe we'll have you know what? We will have an agenda because we will talk about VCF Midwest. We will coordinate. We'll start coordinating. Yeah. Any parting words from y'all?
Good to be back. Good to
Yeah.
see everybody.
Good to see you, Ingo. Good to see you. For the guys that held their tongues, we'll call on you next time.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
All righty then.
Bye, gentlemen.
Good night,
Bye.
all.
See you,
Have a good one,
Gustavo.
guys.
See you, everybody.
See you. Bye.